Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite roguelike games, Gunfire Reborn, and we'll get back to this menu and talk about it at the end. But for the gameplay, it's a lot like any other roguelike if you've played them before, but if not, how it works is you go in to random levels, get random weapons, and kind of just survive as long as possible getting different upgrades, which in this game are labeled as scrolls, leveling up, collecting money, and buying upgrades. It's a super simple formula, but it's one that works really well, with little additions like what you saw there is a portal, which 95% of levels have. It's super rare that you see a level that doesn't have one, and I usually only see it in this first area, but past that, they're always there. At the end of every level, you get one of these, which gives you the option of one of 3 random upgrades that fit with your character. There's multiple characters to choose from, and every single one has a random super ability. The guy that I like to stick with is the first guy you get, and he has this orb that freezes enemies, and depending on what upgrades the level hands to you, can do different things like make sure your next shot is plus 300 damage, or it gives you a second orb in the chamber, or the orb itself does more damage or takes on the elemental effect of whatever weapon you're using. Which, all super dope, and they help a lot. Usually more with bosses, and as you get into further areas. I don't tend to use it too much in this beginning area. But after you play it enough times, you'll see that there's set levels. They may just change how the level plays, whether it's you run through and there's obstacles, or you fight waves of enemies, which is what's happening here, instead of going through different areas of the level. And the same thing kind of works for those portals, where it'll either be an obstacle course, or fighting waves of enemies, or fighting enemies while going through an obstacle course, or a boss. It's usually one of those things. Sometimes it'll be something else, like all the enemies you kill turn into beetles, and then you have to fight the beetles, which maybe do 1 to 2 damage. They're not very strong. And you have the weapons that drop, you unlock as you play. Like if you get critical kills on certain enemies so many times, you'll unlock a weapon, or just defeating a certain amount of enemies of the same type will unlock a weapon, which we'll get into more at the end. But there is a ton of scrolls and weapons to unlock. Scrolls can do various things, like make sure that when your HP is restored, it's restored all the way. If you run out of ammo, you can continue to shoot, but you'll consume health. And then there's one that's really decent, which is yin and yang, and if I'm thinking about the correct one, how it'll work is every 10 seconds or so it switches whether it's yin or yang. With yin, it's receive minus 50% damage, and with yang, it's deal 50% damage, like plus 50% damage. And there's just a ton of them, and I think what keeps the gameplay fresh is you unlocking them as you go. And so it never feels like you're running out of things to do. I mean, I'm sure if you're maxed out, then it might, but before then, it feels like you're consistently unlocking things, finding things, and doing so to get further and further, because you can beat this game. I did not on this playthrough, because I recently restarted this game, and so I'm not very far. But let's kind of get into some of the other things like bosses and levels. So once you get through an area, you'll come to a boss, which beforehand you'll run into the peddler and the craftsman, which you can use to upgrade your weapons and or buy new weapon upgrades. That way, if you have a couple extra coin, you're able to maybe suit yourself up a little more. The peddler has health, ammo, and multiple weapons. And then you have the boss themselves, which usually they're set. It can only be 1 to 2 things per boss encounter. So for this guy, it's either him or another one called the Golem. This one is particularly easier. The weapon I have right now is my favorite weapon in the game, but the level it was not ready to take him on quite as much, so it it took me a little longer, but it still wasn't really an issue. The bosses are a big part of the training of something that's super important in this game, and that's to know your enemy. Every enemy has a set number of attacks and skills and ways that they'll move around, and it sounds complicated because there is a lot of them, but there's only a set number of types per area. So with bosses especially, but even with normal enemies, it's super normal to know if they're a ranged enemy or if they get up close and personal, how strong they are, what kind of attacks they'll use. For base enemies, it's usually only 1 to 2 attacks, but for bosses, it can be like 3 to 6. And it's just super important to kind of study and know your enemy, because it not only helps you progress further, but just play the game and have a smoother run through than you did the last time. And each time you defeat an end level boss, it'll take you to a new area like this. And that'll happen 3 times before you beat the game, which sounds easy, but the enemies get significantly smarter and stronger. Like, especially when you get to this area, you'll start to notice enemies dodging more. Or like that, using heavier shields. You can break the shields of the prior area enemies pretty easily, but these guys don't break. You'll be lucky if you can shoot through them, but that's about the extent of it. Now let's go in and talk about when you die. When that happens, you'll be given the option to revive using some of your soul essence or back out. I typically tend to just back out because that soul essence is what you use to level up and gain things, such as starting with more money, or being able to turn weapons that you don't want into money, upgrading your power orb or your character's power, adding more ammo to your cache, which is super nice, upgrading health and shields, just a ton of options, and every time that you purchase one of these with soul essence, it is considered leveling up. And in leveling up, you can unlock a couple different things, like different scrolls. There's a character that you unlock at level 55, but let's go over everything in the main menu. Daily challenges are something that change every day, like every other game, but these have good and bad effects, whereas this lets you revive yourself more than once. The enemies can do the same thing. So it's kind of a give and take type situation, and you don't have to do it, but you can just to switch up the gameplay. I'm assuming mainly for people who are finished. Talent is exactly what you saw in the end, where it's your level up screen. And this is what I was talking about with the different characters and the different scrolls and weapons that you can unlock at specific milestones of being leveled up. That one, however, right there is super strong. It might seem like a bit of a bad thing, but it is pretty powerful. And then these are the heroes, each with their own set of skills and I think their own starting weapon. It's been a while since I've played as a different one. I typically start with the first guy because his orb is pretty overpowered. I like to just stick with him. And these guys you don't unlock to level, these are soul essence. And they can take a long time, because it's 1,000 soul essence to unlock both of them. So that means not leveling up for a while just to get those guys, if you want to get them before your max level. And, okay, sometimes this happens where it takes away the cursor and you have to kind of figure it out for yourself. But the armory is nice, because this shows you all the weapons you have unlocked and haven't. And if you don't have weapons unlocked, it'll tell you exactly what you need to do in order to unlock them. And if you have no progress on a set number of weapons, it's probably an area you haven't visited yet, because it's fairly easy. It's usually just crit damage or killing an enemy a specific way, or even killing a certain amount of enemies in that type to unlock that weapon. But it is super honest and upfront about how you go about doing such a thing. My favorite is those first two in that category, by the way. They're super OP. And then this is just player stats. Every game has them. We know exactly what they are. It just tells you how many games you played, what level you are, how long you've played. I don't know why that says I've cleared 0 stages, because I've played 14 games. But these also show how many monsters you've taken out, your damage dealt, your favorite weapon, and this left side is pretty, or the right side's pretty neat. That shows you all the places that you've failed, and like where you have died and how long that game lasted, how much damage you put out. And it's just a really cool section. I have no idea why I died on level 3 right there, by the way. that I couldn't tell you. But next up is the logbook, which isn't one I check too often, but this one will show you the scrolls and what you need to do to unlock the ones you haven't, what the ones you do have unlocked do, and again, it's very blunt and obvious. Like, it doesn't hide anything from you. It tells you, like, these are the requirements for this thing. And then monsters is exactly what it sounds like, where it just shows you all the monsters in the game. And mine kind of glitched out here, because if you click on them, it's supposed to show you a 3D model of said monster, whether or not you have them unlocked. You unlock them just by defeating them, by the way. And so here's Yaksha the Sea. I was checking him out, and I went to click on the golem because I was going to show you what he looked like, and it just Yaksha the Sea, and he's also Yaksha the Sea. So for some reason, they're all Yaksha of the Sea. I have no idea why that happened, but yeah, this is a super fun experience. If you haven't played it, I do recommend it. It used to be on Game Pass, but now it runs for about 20 bucks. I did get it on sale for like 10, but it's so much fun. And it's one of those games that you don't think you're putting a lot of time into, and then you check the clock and it's like 2 hours later. If you get invested in it, you're a fan of that type of level up. So I hope you enjoyed. Hope you're having a good day. If you're watching early on, have a good rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep surviving. Sure, why not? And I give this one a 9 out of 10. Highly recommend. See ya.